I'm so happy you're here. Welcome to the final episode of Learn from People Who Lived It here in 2024. There's one concept that I've been trying to master this year, and that's the concept of abundance, especially as it relates to money and wealth. It's an area of my life that I'm constantly trying to improve because it's one of those things that's deeply rooted in my past. Growing up in small town America in a very blue collar family, it was a good week if we had a little extra money to go to McDonald's for an ice cream on a Friday night. And then when I got into my career and I started having success and I started being able to afford just about anything that I wanted to afford, I still couldn't latch onto this healthy mindset around money. There has been a couple of pivotal moments this year that have helped me get closer to mastering the concept of abundance. And the first one is the conversation that I had with Ken Honda right here on Learn from People Who Lived It this past October. So I'll encourage anybody to go back and listen to that episode. The second pivotal moment, the conversation you're getting ready to listen to right now, because it's in this conversation where the light gets turned on for me specifically when I learn that abundance is a frequency. It's something I can't stop thinking about. Please sit back and enjoy this 40-minute conversation with Cortney McDermott, best-selling author, TED Talk speaker, genius, just all-around great person here on Learn from People Who Lived It.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
All right, here we are. It's another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It, and one of my favorite people to sit down and hash life out with is on the screen, Cortney McDermott, who is an international speaker and author, and she's got a couple of books out. She just put out another book this past summer, and now the audio version of it is out. And I wanted to know, who's narrating these books?
I am.
You are?
Yes.
I love it when the author reads their own book. I just think to myself, this way we truly get the authentic version of it. We hear your inflections on the words that are important to you. You say things in a way, you read things in a way. It's like, okay, that sticks more. Was it a big task to get through the audio version of the book?
Absolutely, because I was forced to do it at the same time that I was getting ready for this huge move from Italy to the States. And I totally agree with you. And that's one of the reasons why last minute I just said, okay, it does have to be my voice, because there's something about the frequency also of the messages that you're carrying. And I know you and I are going to talk a bit about frequencies today. So there's so much in the frequency, and it was just, for me, it had to be. I mean, we had so many offers for other people to do this book, the audio recording. And I was holding out because I really did know it had to be my voice.
Good. I'm glad you did. And if you were going to use anybody else, you better use these pipes right here.
100%. Next round, it's you all the way. Yeah.
Well, we're going to jump into this today. It's this word abundance. And you and I have been kicking this around, and I've been really looking forward to this conversation because this is one area of my life, Cortney, that I could really, really use help with. I'm not good in this space. I've been training in other spaces, and that's maybe why I just haven't sharpened this tool as much as I need to. But I, like so many folks, grew up with like nothing, right? No, we didn't have money growing up. It was like a very, very special treat to go to McDonald's on a Friday to get an ice cream after dinner. And it's fine. It's not like we were homeless and living on the streets and didn't have a pot to piss in. It was just like, there wasn't any room for anything extra growing up. And whether we like it or not, we develop a relationship with money and that abundance mindset that says, what if it all comes true? What if it all works out? What if I make all the money I need? That's really, really, really challenging. In fact, I'm going through this right now because my son is about to turn 16 and he wants a car. And, the conversation is, we're going to buy him a car. And I'm thinking, like, guys, we're still rebuilding this ship. We don't have $10,000 to just throw at a used car right now. And I hate that. I really do. I don't want to have that mindset. I want to live from a place that says absolutely, absolutely. And so here's the first question I'm going to ask you today, Cortney, is where is this line in the sand that is reckless? And then where is this line in the sand that is what it needs to be, right? Grounded in truth, just living from that place of abundance, and everything's going to be okay and it's all going to work out. Is that a question you can even tackle?
It's a big question because it holds so many other questions in it, but I'm going to do my best to address also some of the points you just shared, because when we start to dissolve all of that you just put together there, one, there's coming from, again, we hear this, it's so much now that almost we turn off our brains when we hear things like scarcity mindset. And I just want to say, I grew up very much in the same environment, 5 kids born in less than 7 years, all the hand-me-downs, up until very, very late in my life, had a huge scarcity mentality. I would even say up until not that many years ago, and really starting to step into something else. And that's what I want to talk about, because I think when we start to, again, dissolve all the pieces of that question that you just put together, because there was a lot there.
Sorry about that.
What we see, I love it. What we see behind it all is this toil, this spin, this, I have to do something. I just want it to be this way. Let there be a line. Let there be some sort of demarcation that closes me off from something and opens me off to something else. Like, there's so much efforting that I hear in the question. And my invitation to anyone stepping into the frequency of wealth, because it's a frequency, is relax. Relax. Permission, finally, to relax. It's okay this way. It's okay that way. It's okay to feel the fear about the extra car. It's okay to feel the fear about the ship. It's okay to feel the excitement about the extra car. It's okay to feel the excitement about the ship. It's all okay. And what we really are invited to do as we step in, because it's an evolution in the frequency of how you're thinking. And I use frequency very also scientifically. I'm also talking about brainwave frequencies. I'm also talking about what Tesla was talking about when he said it's, if you want to understand the nature of reality, study vibrations and frequencies, something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing, but the idea is there is a frequency of wealth. Now, if you tap into that frequency, I'll ask you, because I have what I know is that frequency for me. But when you tap into the frequency of wealth, what do you feel? What kind of sensations come up? What kind of sort of, you could say either it's a sensation or it's an idea, but it's expansive and you can feel it. What comes up for you when I say, what's the frequency of wealth?
Yeah, honestly, the first thing that came up was fear or like anxiety was the first thing that kind of tugged on me as you were asking me that question.
Well, so it's funny. That is so funny that you're saying that. This is a huge key right here, that we're sort of unlocking a locked door, because so this message came through for me in preparation for today. It's just, as I think it was actually somewhere between waking and sleeping, I wrote this down in my notebook, the frequency of wealth. And what came through for me was freedom, generosity, enthusiasm, and play.
Not anxiety and fear.
So I'll ask you, and let me phrase it this way, because this will be easier also for anyone listening. Okay. When you imagine the idea of being able to just say, of course, son of mine, like, let's get the best possible car we can, or of course to this remodeling, or of course I'm going to take this trip or go to this conference or do this thing for my business, or whatever that looks like. What does that feel like, and what does it inspire in you?
Okay. So now I'm putting myself in a place where I'm like, yeah, whatever, blank checks for everybody, kind of a mindset. Is that what you're getting at?
Potentially, if that's your thing.
Yeah.
Or
I mean,
just
that's
whatever your thing is.
But you get what I'm saying, right? Like that's the confusion for some
I
people,
do.
including me. It's like, what is the line between reckless and abundance? Okay, so I'll answer your question first. Okay, so what do I feel? Honestly, when I think about the ability to do those things, I have a genuine tug of war, and it's that, and it's something I really need to work on, and that's why I said that up front, right?
Good.
There's this blue collar mentality because of the way that I grew up that says no is okay. No is actually a good thing from time to time. And not being able to have everything you want, like that teaches you something about yourself. And so there's like this little tug of war going on there. But then there's also this thing of that would be incredible. That would be the great. I would love to be able to do that. And it's funny because as you ask me that question, one of the things that I've been thinking about these days is even if I could just write blank checks for everybody and everything, would I?
Exactly. Would you? So, all right. I want to say about this because it's so important.
Feels
I
like a
think
therapy
also
session to me. I love this.
I love it too. I love it too. Also for anyone listening, because I know again, like I said, really struggled with this for a long time because I was exactly like you, seesawing between this is what I see, but this is what this is what I see materially, physically represented around me. And this is what I feel inside me that is a potential that doesn't seem to be available to me right now. And when you were talking about it, this seesaw thing is so important in general, not just for wealth, not just really for everything. There's a line, I think it's James 1:8, where it says a divided mind is unstable in all its ways. Just sit with that for a second. A divided mind is unstable in all its ways.
It's a great quote.
There is so much power in attention. And again, some of these concepts, we hear them so much that we kind of gloss over them, or we think, oh, forget it, it's not for me or whatever. It does take some training. Lots of times people say, oh, but I tried this for a week or whatever. And I say, okay, well, how long was that repetitive pattern in your psyche before you started that process? There is a clearing away. There's a purifying, there's a washing away of what's been in the way of the truth of who you are. Because abundance is actually the truth of who we are. And again, we can hear these, they can almost sound like platitudes, but they are truthisms. They are the reality of what it is that you can come back to at any time. Let me give you an example, a concrete example, because I was seeing if we would lead there with the question that I asked you, but I want to give you a concrete example I was giving a presentation in front of 1,000 women not that long ago. And one of the women in the audience was asking this question about abundance. She was asking this question about wealth. And she said, I really want to make my first $1 million this year. I really want to make my first $1 million. And I said, okay, great. I said, what would that allow you to do? And she started saying, well, I could pay off my team. I could pay off my dad. I could do this. I could do that. I said, great. I said, and what would that allow? What would that invite in? And she just kept, again, it was sort of stayed superficial for about 30 seconds. And then all of a sudden I said, okay, and what would that invite in? And she said, I would finally feel worthy.
Like enough.
Yeah. I'd finally feel worthy. And the tears just started to stream down her face. And she started to connect with that sense of worthiness that lives in us. It doesn't come from outside. It will never come from the amount of money you have in the bank. It will never come from who you know, from titles, from accolades. It'll never come from any of that. And we've seen this at the upper echelons of society. This is why you can see the difference between someone who, when they generate wealth, they give so much away, they live in so much more joy, they create so much more joy around them, versus the person who generates wealth and creates more misery and more suffering in and around, because it was always inside. One of the things that I'm really working with my daughter right now and hoping to get her to understand is everything you're running away from and everything you're racing toward is inside you. the consciousness that is guiding your beliefs, your behaviors, your actions in any given moment is what is directing like the whole gamut, you know?
I want to break. Can we
Yeah.
kind of break this down some more?
Sure.
Because I love what you're saying, and I think a lot of people are intrigued by the concepts that you're putting down. So I like to speak really practically.
Yeah.
And I love this idea that, you know, you kind of said, well, what would that mean? Well, what would that mean? Okay. And so let's put an example out there, and you can use me, or you can use you can use somebody that you met before. But I want to take like the average Jane or Joe, right? And who's, you know, out there, they're grinding, they got a job that they have to be at 40 hours a week, and you know, and they're ready to step into this abundance mindset. And so practically speaking, because I think if you're like, let's say you're in a relationship with somebody, practically speaking, you both got to get on the same page, and you both probably need to do your exercise, which is, well, then what will that mean? What will that mean? What will that mean? And then, so what do you do with that? When you peel it all back and you get to that stage of like, okay, it boils down to, I don't feel worthy. Mm-hmm. Now what?
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked this, because it's funny. Right before you asked it, I was thinking, let's get practical, let's get tactical with this, because lots of times, again, we hear these things, we say, oh, that's all well and good, but we're registering it here, and we're not registering it on a cellular level. And things can only change when it registers on a cellular level that you are wealth.
So like meditation, is this when we get quiet?
No, because even there, you're spinning wheels, because most people, when they think of meditating, they think of sitting cross-legged, holding a mudra and chanting a mantra, or doing some sort of breath work, or whatever that is. I am talking about something way simpler, but way harder. Everything in you will probably rail against what it is that I'm suggesting. And I already suggested it actually in our conversation. And I have to re-suggest it because it's so hard to hear that you'll miss it every time until you're ready to get it. And it's so simple, which is, again, what makes it so elusive. You've got to relax.
Yeah. And
concretely what that looks like, and I give two suggestions all the time. I say yawn, literally. Yeah. You and I've talked about this before.
And here it comes. At any second, you and I are both about to yawn. It's something so funny about saying it.
Exactly. Yawn for 30 seconds. Set a timer on your phone. Do it as often as you can. Yawn. We talked about this before, but yawning is considered one of the best kept secrets of neuroscience. There's so much data around the relaxation response and the energizing response that yawning generates. Yawning is, it releases a whole host of neurochemicals that are really fantastic, oxytocin, serotonin, et cetera. And really what it does is it also, the other big thing that it does is it sends a message to your vagus nerve, which is the largest nerve in your body, that you're safe. When you're freaking out and you think you're not safe, and you think you don't have what you need, or you're not going to have what you need, or your needs aren't going to be met, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like if you we start getting into that, we start to move into brainwave frequencies that are the absolute opposite of what is conducive with creativity and what is conducive with opening up to this intelligence that lives within us. We do the exact opposite. So yawning is one of the fastest resets. It will reset you over and over and over until you start to say, I'm safe. Because it's one thing to think I'm safe up here and to try to get there with your cognitive mind. It's another thing, like I said, to have a cellular activation of safety in your body, a felt sense of safety. Yawning is the first thing I recommend. Getting horizontal is the other thing I recommend. Again, you are literally shifting brainwave frequencies. We know this because, right, we associate, every time we lay down, we associate it with it's time for bed, right? It's time to relax. And so where our brainwave frequencies are going to be moving from beta to alpha, to, if we keep going into sleep, theta, delta, et cetera, which is great. This is why you hear a lot of times creatives or scientists like Einstein would fall asleep for 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes. And the minute the pencil dropped, they'd wake up and they'd have that kind of eureka moment, because they're allowing the cognitive mind to just be still long enough for this, whatever, however we want to call that intelligence, whatever mind that is, that's pumping your blood and throughout your body, and your oxygen throughout your body, and et cetera. So we are opening up to, and the minute that we start to relax, we're opening up to all of that. We're opening up to the possibilities of freedom, of enthusiasm, of all of that. And lots of times people will say, well, I don't have time for that. I can't just go lay down. And here I like to always quote, again, I'm paraphrasing, but the Dalai Lama, who said something like, if you think you can't meditate for 10 minutes or 5 minutes, meditate for an hour. If you think you can't lay down, we've got a problem, Houston.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so the tactical thing, and it's going to sound like the exact opposite of everything we've been told is tactical, because everything says, no, you got to do this five-year plan, or you got to have this strategy, or that's right. And trust me. I was on all that. I've been called in for strategy work for some of the biggest companies in the world. Like, I get it. I get it. I was hyper trained in that too. And so what I'm suggesting seems counterintuitive, or I should say countercultural. It is very countercultural. But there's a direct representation in my life. The more I relax, the more everything opens up, comes to me, the more I step into these frequencies that we're talking about. And again, it's not woo-woo. This is actually science. I can actually feel and see the tangible results when I do things like client summaries or whatever else. I need to relax. And that's when all the things come through. That's when what needs to come through comes through.
So, okay, I want to make sure that I'm following along. And so, one of the hardest things to do in the world is relax when somebody tells you to just relax. And it's tough. It's like, hey, go chill out. Yeah, thank you very much. That's super helpful. But when I relax, it's what's going here. Let me reset my question, because that was a disaster. What's going through my head is this idea of the chicken or the egg, right? Like, hey, listen, I can't relax because I'm in this situation. If I just had this, then I could relax, right? Like, I used to play that game in my head quite a bit. It's like, I'll be able to chill out when. And what you're suggesting is, when is now? When is right now?
Yeah, that's the fallacy that we all continually fall in, is that as soon as this happens, then I can be happy, wealthy, free, whatever that looks like. Like, as soon as I finish paying the mortgage, I'll be free. As soon as I do this, I'll be free. No, the freedom lives within you. The milepost will continue to change if you continually externalize your gratification and your peace. This is what Buddha was talking about when he talked about the trap. He wasn't talking about desire per se. He was talking about your attachment to desire.
Okay.
As far as I can tell, he was talking about, and there's like a lot of great work also. Anthony Mello talks about this. So super fascinating, because it's like this idea that you can't be happy unless, that's how he put it. But it's like, also, you can't feel wealthy until this, can't be whatever. And it's always looking outside. So it's like Dorothy wandering around and around and around, and then suddenly realizing, oh my God, I had the way home all along. And relaxing, I know, can sound, because I remember days when people would say to me, relax about whatever it was. And I remember getting all bunched up and and like, what, I'm relaxed, I'm so relaxed, and I wasn't so.
I'm super relaxed.
And I just remember, like, I remember it now, and all I can do is laugh, because it's so beautiful when you finally kind of just wake up to it. And lots of times people think, oh, this is a journey and I need to do these things. Actually, it's not. Like, you can wake up right now. It's just like waking up from a bad dream. It doesn't have to be this long. Yeah. Go ahead.
What did it look like for you as you started to relax? Could you let us into your world a little bit? As you started to relax and sit into these things, what started taking shape, or what did you start to notice?
Some of the most phenomenal things ever occurred in my life the minute I started to relax.
For example?
Like, for example, I used to write out these really long, I mentioned a moment ago, like these client summaries. I would just, I would sit at my computer for all the time it took, sometimes it'd be just a couple hours. And I was doing this every week. I was writing out these client summaries, and they were good. I mean, they were good. They were very, I guess you could say, intellectually driven. They were good. They were great strategy documents, all that kind of stuff. And then just one day I was like, maybe I'll just lay down and see what comes. And I laid down and I put my phone on airplane mode and I had my notes open, and I don't have a lock on my phone. Anybody who wants to take my phone, I don't have any locks on my phones. I have two and they're not locked. And I just would open up my eyes when something would come through. And I'm telling you, I have never had such beautifully written summaries, and they just got better and better and better and better. And people would say to me, like, where does these even come from? And I'd say, I don't even know. I can't even tell you, because yes, it's, of course, there's a mix of my experience. There's a mix of my training. There's a mix of my studies. There's a mix of all these things, but there's something so much greater that's working through. And another example is, like, before I take stages now, it used to be that I'd take a stage and I would think of, all the things. I'd make sure, I'm repeating my speech, and I'm trying to get it right. And I'm just like, I want to get it right. Right.
Right.
And it's a performance, and I have a whole thing about performance versus play. But anyway, it used to be like that. And my speeches were okay. They were okay, but they weren't moving. They weren't something that directly kind of changes things, again, like I said, on a cellular level, because you are it. You are it. And so in my speeches, I would start backstage. I started just one day, I just started calling on that intelligence to guide the whole thing. Like, I was as prepared as I was going to be, guide. And I'm telling you, Matthew, I've experienced some really phenomenal things on stage right now. Like, there's one of the last talks, one of the last bigger talks that I gave, the whole next day, I felt like I had this electric current just going through my body. I couldn't stop crying because I felt so much energy. I felt like a live wire of this intelligence. And I was on that stage for almost 4 hours because they just couldn't stop asking me questions. And there was, live translation, but I was also translating in all these different, there were all of these different dialects as well that I don't even understand on my own, but I did understand in that moment. I had access to intelligence that we all have access to. So I'm talking about incredibly phenomenal gifts that course through all of us. But you've got to say, I'm going to trust in this. I'm going to lean into it. I'm going to relax into it. And, you and I've talked about this before. You're doing that anyway for virtually everything that's occurring, both inside of you and outside of you. So just extend it as much as you can and keep extending as far out as the eye can see.
Interesting. What next? Okay. So it sounds like most problems to solve, we have to become aware that there's an issue first. We become aware, and we yawn, we get horizontal, some shit shows up. Now I've got some information. How did you cycle through which thoughts to act on and which thoughts were just sort of like along for the ride?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'll still do right now is I'll lay down with a piece of paper. So if there's like random distracting stuff that comes into my head, I don't sort of fixate on it. I'll just write it down. I'll just say, I don't know, call Joe or something. And I've got it there. So it just stops taking up mental space and clogging up that pipeline. So I do that. One of the things I also like, I even have a Post-it up. I say, attune, act, attune, act. Put yourself back in the frequency of this intelligence, take an action, put yourself back in, take an action. You will definitely feel the difference between an attuned act and a non-attuned act, because the non-attuned act feels like that's that striving energy. It's that gnarly sort of like hamster wheel energy. And the attuned action feels like, oh man, that felt great. And it's usually actually pretty quick too, because you're just ready for it. Because again, that intelligence, that's the same one that's conducting the trillions of biochemical reactions in your body every second, right, is saying, it's giving you the next piece. It's a little bit like, when Martin Luther King Jr. was talking about, just needing to see that next stair, not the whole staircase, just the next stair. And what I have found, the more I relinquish that, I sort of just hand it over. And again, I know it's the hardest thing in the world. It's the simplest, but it's the hardest.
Right.
But the more I
Always
do
the
it,
case.
the more I just like, I will literally get the creative insight. I go and action it. And then I go back and I rest, and I go and action and I go and rest. And it's not like I'm constantly going to my bed, during the day, but sometimes in the middle of the meeting, I'll just take a deep breath. I won't talk. I'll just wait. I'll get quiet. I'll wait for something that actually feels true. When you're attuned, it feels true. You're not trying, you're not struggling. Look at the daisies of the field. They neither toil nor spin. You're just
It's so interesting. And I think I'm like a lot of people, and maybe you have this piece to you too. I'm really good at what you're talking about in the creative process. Like when it's time for me to create something, whether that's a podcast or a radio show or a television show or a blog post or a social media post or whatever, I'm really good at relaxing and being attuned to that voice. And I hear it really crystal clear. Like it's so vivid for me in that department. But I'm not that, like I said up front, I'm not that sharp in other areas of my life. And so when you were talking, I was writing down a couple of things that I want to follow up on you about. And so I want to talk about dealing with disappointment, and I want to talk about building trust in yourself. Because, and again, to get back to the example that I just gave you, in the creative process, I'm amazing at failure. Like I throw so many things out, and some of them are amazing and some of them totally suck, and they're, whatever. They're just a waste of space. It's probably not different in the abundance mindset when it comes to wealth or money or some of these things that a lot of people want. How do you deal with the disappointment of, okay, look, I yawned, I got fucking horizontal, and I dreamed up all these great things, and none of them happened. Like none of them worked. None of them were true. Yeah. I can answer that question for you. And like what I would do in the creative process would be like, who cares? Next. What's next? Just move on to the next thing. Yeah. Is it the same in this department?
Well, what I'm hearing again is like trying to get somewhere and you're already there.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I'm hearing in your question.
Interesting.
Is like, I'm really trying to get somewhere that I'm already there, but I just don't know it. It's a little bit like Ram Dass saying, I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know, but the perplexing problem is you don't know. And it's so curious listening because you've had all this practice in this and you feel very comfortable with it. And it's almost like there's this part of you that's like, well, I could practice that, but I'm not comfortable with it. So, or as I should say, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah. Right.
And none of us are familiar, or at least, if the vast majority of us living in the culture that we live in, we're not at all familiar with the idea of relaxing. It's almost seen as something that's really frowned upon, like, oh, you're going to go take a nap, like why, you're going to do it. And I've been so boastful about it for so long now. One of the things that I think you and I talked about this, and maybe our first episode together, was how I've removed the word busy from my lexicon. I just don't.
Me too, because of you.
Yeah.
Because of you, I don't say it anymore.
Awesome. It's like, why would we want to be busy?
Right.
I mean, I don't want to be busy. I want to experience this whole thing in freedom and joy and excitement. And I want to be out playing, and I want to discover, and I want to experiment, which is exactly what you're talking about in this creative process.
Right.
So it's like, what would happen if I experiment? What would happen if I extend that experimentation, that playful experimentation that you have, to this? What would happen? And just opening up to like, okay, here's the other thing I will say. I get in those spins too. So for instance, I'll lay down and then just like you said, okay, now what? I'll be like, now what? And I will not let myself up until I'm calm. Like, unless I know I've got to be somewhere, like I got to go pick my daughter up from school or something like that, but I won't. Otherwise I'm like, no, until you are in that, until you've connected with that peace place. Since we're talking about wealth, I'm going to give you the greatest example. Oh, I'm so excited about this. I'm so excited this just came through right now.
Let's go.
So Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
He had this thing, and he talks about it publicly in one of his interviews with Oprah, and probably in other interviews, but I just remember seeing it years ago. He would go up to the hills of Hollywood, and he had this check that he had written for himself for I think it was $10 million for acting services rendered is what he wrote on the check.
Yeah.
And he would go up to this hill. So, I think it was Mulholland. I don't remember how.
Yeah, Mulholland Drive.
Thank you, Mulholland Drive.
Uh-huh.
And he would go up there and he would sit in his beaten down truck. And I think there was even a point where he was living out of his truck, if I'm remembering correctly. And he would feel into the frequency of having that check in his hands and all the things that was, all of the sensations that gave him, all of the possibilities that gave him. And he would not drive back down until he felt that.
I'm writing it down. Feel into the frequency.
Yeah, and he had written on the check something like Thanksgiving in the year, I can't remember. And it was I guess it was like a month before Thanksgiving or something like that, that Dumb and Dumber came out, and he was commissioned for Dumb and Dumber and paid $10 million for Dumb and Dumber. And again, I'm hoping I'm remembering all this, but it's more or less like that. And maybe some of the titles change. But the thing is, that is what we're talking about here. It's relax into it. There's not anything you need to do. You're already so skilled. And if someone who's listening to this is listening to a podcast like yours, it means they're already so skilled.
Yes.
They have the patience, they have the drive, they have the motivation, they have the will, they have all the things. You're so skilled. Take those skills and transfer them over to these feelings, which is not a check. I repeat, it's not an amount of money in the bank. That's never going to be it. It's the sensations of freedom, generosity, enthusiasm, play, happiness, being able to give, whenever you want to give, being able to say yes whenever you want to say yes, and no when you want to say no. And
this is awesome. Keep going.
Okay.
Is there more on the
No,
tank?
No. I'm going to stop there. Go.
Okay. Well, I was just going to just remind everybody really quickly that the new book, Give Yourself Permission, is on the audio end of things now. So if you enjoy reading, that's great. But I can't stand it, right? Like I haven't read a book in years. I'm like full on listening. And so in full transparency, I'll be consuming your book now that the audio version is out, because that feels better for me. I think it's been an interesting conversation on abundance and wealth. And I'd like to spend the last maybe 5 or 6 minutes. So we spent a lot of time, I think, in the money lane, which I know is where most people view abundance. But somebody challenged me a few months ago to redefine my goals as my wise self. And I was actually just looking for this piece of paper as you were talking, because, one of the things that I wrote down was to have an excellent vibe and energy with my family. And that was like the first thing that I wrote down. Not I want to have $1 million, not, this, that, and the other. Like, I want an excellent vibe. And so I wondered if you would just take us through your process as it relates to abundance in relationships with your kids, with your spouses, with your friends, with your coworkers. Like, what would that look like? Is it any different?
It's across the board what I was sharing with you. What's under your desire for these things.
Okay.
So for me, as I said, freedom, generosity, enthusiasm, play, that is exactly what I endeavor to bring to relationship, what I endeavor to bring to my career, what I endeavor to bring to everyone I come across. It's like everyone who leaves you should leave you richer than when they found you.
Yes.
They should leave you richer than when they found you. That I truly believe. And it means in every way. Again, we get so confused of like, I think it's really important to challenge the idea of it, like money, because money is fantastic, but money is it's a symptom. It's symptomatic of something, under whether you have enough, have too much, have a situation where you're maybe using money for things that are not as healthy for you, whatever that looks like. But for me, the biggest thing in relationship is freedom. Maybe that's because like, that's one of my biggest things is like, I I don't need to control you. I don't need you for my happiness. This is a beautiful teaching that I ran across, and again, Anthony DeMello, that's funny, I'm quoting him twice today, but this idea that like, you're free to do what you want. I don't need you for my happiness. I don't need you for those things. I enjoy you thoroughly. I don't need you.
Mm-hmm.
And this for me is like it's one of those things that I remember Anthony DeMello talking about it in his work and be like, oh, you're going to say that's not okay, right? Because the way he described relationships, and I'm quoting from him directly, was a thing of the market. I give you this, you give me that. I give you my affection, you give me your generosity. Like, I don't know what it looks like for whomever, but I remember hearing that years ago and thinking, man, right, we're playing all these games, but when you drop them and you say you're free and I'm free, and let's just enjoy all the moments we get to share with each other, and then let's enjoy other moments that we don't get to share with each other, and let's not try to control and capture it. Let's just let it be a happening, a beautiful happening. So for me, that's also, again, these are all real wealth, real abundance is when you can say, I'm open to all of it and it's all good.
So it's safe to say that if you're interacting with folks and they don't make you richer after that interaction, it might be time to examine your environment and the people that you're interacting with.
Yeah. Well, Einstein said that the environment is the sole governing agency of the particle.
Yeah, but what does he know?
But I used to think he was talking about the external environment. So I was like, oh crap, I got to clean things up. There's a lot happening here.
He's talking about this vessel right here.
But I don't know. I don't know. I'm not unfortunately privy to exactly what he was talking about, but I do believe that he also was alluding to the possibility of it being your inner environment and how that then shapes and informs your external environment. But I think there is a process of, and I know in my life for sure, I have had to distance elements that were not turning me on. Yeah. It's like whatever is in front of you, it's either turning on that light or it's turning it or it's dimming it. The light is there, but it's like it's either stoking the flame or it's trying to extinguish it. And I am very much in favor of whatever stokes it and whatever, keeps the light on and brightens it up as much as possible. I think that's so important. And of course, you're going to be exposed in your life to people and circumstances that don't do that. And then it becomes about your inner environment. How am I standing around this light and saying, no, I've got this safe boundary for you. You're okay.
There you go. All right, Cortney McDermott, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you so much to everyone who's here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1, to help you feel less alone. 2, encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3, when you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.